special conversation with Mr. Jeff Liu. Jeff Liu is the Director General of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office here in Auckland. Now, Jeff has 22 years' experience as a public servant working for the Taiwanese government. He's been on lockdown like everybody else in Auckland and New Zealand for the last 5 weeks at his home in St. John's, central Auckland. I wanted to get Jeff on to have a discussion, first of all, because he's a great guy. He's one of the diplomats in Auckland that I've got to know over the years. And because Taiwan has such an extraordinary story when it comes to its response to COVID-19. Get this, Taiwan has a population of 23 million, so about the same as Australia, but it's an island nation like ours, much smaller than the North Island. So their population density is 671 people per square metre. In New Zealand, we have 18 people per square kilometre, sorry, not square metre. And then Taiwan is 150 kilometres off the coast of China. It's about the same distance from China, where the coronavirus outbreaks began, as Auckland is from Whangarei. So you've got lots of people living close together, right next to the centre of the coronavirus outbreak, and you might have thought that they would get hit really hard. In fact, some initial modelling said that they were the second most risky country when it came to coronavirus. However, look at the statistics. Taiwan so far has had 400 cases versus 1,400 in New Zealand. That's bearing in mind they have almost 5 times our population. Taiwan has had 6 deaths out of 23 million people. New Zealand has done really well, but currently it's 17 deaths out of a much smaller population. Now, Taiwan, like New Zealand, is a country that has a proud history. They're a free democracy, having recently re-elected their president in February, and she will begin serving her second term in May. They're an entrepreneurial country. They're New Zealand's 8th largest export market. And I think that this is a time when we should be looking around the world at what we can learn. So with that in mind, I'm really thrilled that Jeff has accepted my invitation. I hope that it's going to be really useful and educational as we New Zealanders think about how we deal with COVID-19, what we can learn from our friends around the world, how we can do things better. And so without anything more from me, I want to welcome you, Jeff, and just to speak for a while about the challenge that Taiwan faced and how Taiwan has faced it to get such extraordinary results when things seem to be so bleak at the beginning of the outbreak.
Oh, thank you. And good afternoon, David, and good afternoon to everybody in front of the computer. So as you said, I have been in my small bubble for 1 month, so I really miss people. So thank you, David, for having me to join this online conversation to share Taiwan's experience to fight the coronavirus disease, the COVID-19. I think Taiwan's model has been widely recognized by many countries. In New Zealand, the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and Dr. Ashley Bloomfield referred to Taiwan's achievement many times in public. So many friends ask me how Taiwan did it. So it's really a great honor for me to share our experience with everyone here. So in the beginning, so I will give about 10 to 15 minutes presentation, and then we will open for discussion. So first of all, I will give you, everybody, a brief introduction about Taiwan and his proximity to China and how Taiwan relates to China in several different fronts. Taiwan, like New Zealand, is an island state. So it's between Japan and the Philippines. It's about 150 kilometers off the coast of mainland China. And people traveling across Taiwan Strait very frequently and in big volume. I can give you a few numbers. Can you imagine In any given moment, there are more than 1.2 million Taiwanese people in China. They are doing business there, traveling there, studying there. In year 2018, Taiwan received 2.5 million tourists from China to Taiwan. Before the outbreak of the COVID-19, every week, every week, there was more than 600 direct flights between Taiwan and China. And China is Taiwan's number one trading partner. So, in light of the numbers or the fact I just mentioned, and considering the contagious nature of the disease, so when the disease broke out in December last year, as you mentioned, Taiwan ranked as the nation with the second highest risk of infection in the world. The first case in Taiwan was confirmed in January 21st. Till today, 3 months passed, we have 429 cases, including 6 deaths. So we didn't lock down any cities. So the business remain open. Schools and universities remain open. The 23 million people daily life basically carry on as usual. So Taiwan's performance stands out when you compare to any neighboring Asian countries, or if you compare to any other countries in the world, our achievement is remarkable. So I think this success is not by chance, it's by our choice, by our hard work. So how Taiwan did it, I think I would like to review the whole process from 3 different perspectives. First, we responded to the crisis very quickly and mobilized resources efficiently. In year 2003, 17 years ago, when SARS broke out in China, so Taiwan was seriously hit by SARS. So since then, Taiwan has been constantly on high alert and stand ready for any emerging infectious disease from China or from any part of the world. So we learn lessons from our previous experience. So this time on December 31st, 2019, when the news was confirmed that there is a mysterious illness, a typical pneumonia happening in Wuhan, China, on the same day, the Taiwan government put border quarantine in place. The Taiwan health officials get on board direct flight from Wuhan and check passengers' temperature and check for symptoms like coughing or sneezing. Several days later, on January 2nd, the government set up the response team. On January 20th, we activated the Central Academic Command Center, which is very important to coordinate all policies and mobilize resources. But I have to point it out, all this happened before the virus arrived at Taiwan. All this happened before WHO declared the public health emergency of international concern. And it's 2 months before WHO declared the COVID-19 and pandemic. So I would say the Taiwan's government responded to this crisis very quickly. This is the first factor I would like to mention and to everyone. The second part, I think Taiwan take a very aggressive approach to knock down the disease. When someone is tested positive, he will be hospitalized. He will stay in the negative pressure room for treatment. And we are very cautious to release people from hospital. We will do the test once, twice, even 3 times. So we just want to make sure there's no virus in the patient before we can release him from hospital. As for those people who had close contact with confirmed cases, we put them in isolation or quarantine, home isolation or home quarantine, according to different risk degree. I think through these aggressive measures like border control, home quarantine, home isolation, and patient treatment, we are very confident in Taiwan, the community transmission is very low. We do have some sporadic cases, but it's very rare. That's why our life can going on as usual. So in Taiwan, we didn't exercise the mass testing because I think it's fair to say we focus more on case identifying, and we focus more on contact tracing instead of the widespread testing. The third I would like to share with everyone is we make the most of our strength in IT industry. I'm fascinated about this part. So IT industry is Taiwan's strength. So when the disease broke out, so we combine different database in different ministries. I can give you an example. So when the disease broke out, we combine the National Health Insurance Data Bank with our Immigration and Customs Data Bank. So if someone traveled back to Taiwan from seriously infected countries, so maybe several days later, he didn't feel well. He visited a doctor. So the local physician will have access to his travel history. If the local doctors think it's a probable case of COVID-19, he will refer to the local hospital or the medical center for test. When it's confirmed positive, the person will be hospitalized until he is cured. So we use the technology to identify probable cases with very high accuracy. Another example is for people put in quarantine, how can we make sure they stay at home, not wandering around? So we develop an electronic system to make sure people in quarantine stay at home. I think it's good for both sides. It's good for government to make sure they stay at home, not going outside to spread virus to the community. The other side, the tracking system will allow the local health workers and civil servants to provide care services and medical assistance to those people in isolation. Mhm. The last point I would like to say, because Taiwan is not a member of WHO, World Health Organization, so we cannot rely on first-hand information from WHO, not alone the timely assistance. So we have to develop our own health vigilance system. We take a different approach. When WHO recommended against travel restriction on flight to or from China, at the same time, Taiwan started to ban direct flight from China. When WHO keeps saying that face mask is not necessary, the face mask is not helpful, but at the same time, Taiwan government encouraged people to put on face mask and also increase the production of the face mask and all protective gears necessary for the frontline health workers. When WHO tweeted on January 14 that there is no evidence that the virus will spread through people-to-people transmission, but I have to point it out, 2 weeks earlier, Taiwan government sent an email to WHO to tell them that the virus is very likely to transmit from people to people. But sadly, WHO didn't take it very seriously. I think it's fair to say if WHO take Taiwan's notice seriously and responded quickly, the world today could have been very different. So hundreds and thousands of lives will be saved. It's really a shame. So I think we did a good job. So far, we know we are far away from getting over the disease, but we will keep doing that. I think I will stop here. So I give the floor back to David. I'm happy to open to discussions and happy to take questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, look, thank you so much, Jeff. And the questions that have come in, by the way, normally when I run these events as local Epsom electorate events physically, we invite people to email in their questions for our guest speaker. So I've got some questions in front of me that have been emailed in. We've got a lot of questions that people are asking on the Facebook feed, but I just want to kick off with a few because you've said some fascinating things. And there really seem to be 3 points. One is about the speed of Taiwan's response. Two is about the aggression and the efficiency that Taiwan used to track and trace people who might be infected using big data and using the very strong IT sector that drives a lot of the Taiwan economy. And three is there's some very interesting observations about the role of the WHO and Taiwan's relationship with it. So just to begin with the speed, Taiwan had put in place its national response. If I hear correctly, as early as January 20, you were in full crisis mode and operating as though you needed to do everything within the power of the Taiwan government to control a potential coronavirus outbreak.
Oh.
So we've just got a small connectivity problem with the internet there.
Mm-hmm. Can you say your question again?
Oh, I just wanted to first of all talk about the speed. So that the Taiwanese government response was in full swing as early as January 20.
Mm-hmm. Yes, on January 20th, the government activated the CECC, the Central Epidemic Command Center. This is the command center who organized all the policies to mobilize the resources. For example, so a face mask. In the beginning, people have panic buying the face mask, but the command center will control. We establish a rational system. So you can buy, for example, every adult can buy 3 face masks per week, or maybe 5 for children per week. So we have a rational system to make sure everyone can get the face mask, especially reserved the face mask and protective gear for the frontline health workers. So it's very effective.
So in Taiwan, if you wanted PPE, the government set up a marketplace where everyone could buy it, but there was a limit on how much each person could buy.
So it's on different stage. The volume was different. For in the beginning, maybe 3 face masks for adult per week, 5 per week for children. But now I think it's about 15 face masks every 2 weeks for adult and 15 for children also.
Okay, and just moving to the aggression of the approach. So, as I understand it, Taiwan never had a lockdown as we know it. There wasn't a full shutting down of the economy that many countries such as New Zealand and Australia have had, and yet you've managed these incredible results. The other thing that I find really amazing is that, according to the data that I've looked up, and I could be wrong, the amount of testing that Taiwan has done has been very low. On a per person basis, Taiwan has carried out 10 times fewer tests than New Zealand. What's interesting, though, is that you've carried out 40% more tests per case of COVID-19. So when you do test, you're more likely to find someone than we do in New Zealand, but you haven't done that much testing. And so I just wonder if you could talk more about the big data approach. It seems you've been able to merge some of your databases for health insurance and immigration, and then track people in order to get the best targeting, so that you can intervene when somebody is likely to be sick, but you don't have to shut down everybody. Can you talk more about that aggressive technological approach?
Yes, yes. As you mentioned, we didn't shut down any cities. The people's life goes on as usual. Because I have to mention our national health insurance system. This is a very great health insurance system, covered almost 99% of the residents in Taiwan. So everyone has a health insurance card. Everyone has an ID number. So we combine the national health insurance database with our immigration database, because in Taiwan, if you travel abroad, you can have a tracking number. So we know where you go and where you came from. So we combine these two databases. So if someone came back from overseas, so if he had symptoms, so he visited a doctor. So the doctor can have your travel history. So if the doctor think is a very likely COVID-19 case, so he will refer to hospital or the local medical centers for check. And we are very aggressive for patient treatment. So when a case was found positive, so he will be hospitalized immediately and stay in the isolation room for until he was cured. Because we cannot release those patients with virus and to the community, they will make the virus further spread. So because we use the IT strength, combine those databases, so we can very easy, or we can identify those probable cases with very high efficiency. So that's why we don't have the widespread community transmission. We do have some sporadic cases, but very rare. That's why we don't have to do the mass testing.
Okay, so I guess the question that follows on from that, as I mentioned, Taiwan, like New Zealand, is a democracy. You've recently held free and fair elections, and I think that's a fantastic thing. But I wonder about how the Taiwanese population feels about privacy and freedom from government surveillance.
Mhm.
Because when you talk about taking the immigration database, the list of people who've gone in and out of the country, and then merging that with medical records, and then using that data to effectively create a list of people most at risk, what's the response of Taiwanese people to government having that much information?
And of course, privacy is one of the first priorities for the Taiwan government. So in the ordinary times, we respect all the individual privacies, but in the fight against the COVID-19, it's like a wartime. So we combine the necessary information to we coordinate all the information needed to fight the disease. I think we had the widespread support from Taiwanese people because it's necessary. For example, for the electronic system, we don't use the electronic system in the daily life, but at times we stand united to fight the disease. So we need this system. We need IT assistance to identify the probable cases. So I think the government has the support, the majority of Taiwanese people.
So people in Taiwan do care about privacy and civil liberties, but the belief is that it's possible to design data
Yes.
and technology systems that give the government good information for targeting a virus whilst preserving people's privacy?
I think a very important point I would like to make is the trust people have on their government. So they know the government is trying to protect the welfare of the people. So people will supportive of the government measures. Like in the situation in New Zealand, I think New Zealand's Kiwis are doing a fantastic job to support the lockdown measures, to follow the instructions, guidance given by the government. Stay in your bubbles. Don't use your cars. Use your car only for essential services. I think the people's trust on their government is a key factor for any successful policy.
Look, I completely agree. And one thing that's interesting is that both Taiwan and New Zealand both have very popular leaders. The president recently re-elected there has got international attention, just like our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has been admired around the world for their leadership. I just wonder about the third issue you raised, though, and this, in a
Mhm.
way, is probably the one that will have the most interest for people. And that is the issue of the World Health Organization. Now, you and I have had discussions in the past, Jeff, about how Beijing, or the People's Republic of China, has been unwilling to support Taiwan's independent membership of the World Health Organization. And I think there's two schools of thought out there. One is that the World Health Organization really failed to get good, timely information about what was happening in Taiwan, in Wuhan in December and January out to the rest of the world. And that, really it's a hopeless institution and we shouldn't invest in it. But the other school of thought is that had Taiwan been a member of the WHO, then you could have been much more helpful in informing them, because, as you say, Taiwan provided arguments on the 31st of December last year to the World Health Organization that it is possible that this virus would spread human to human. And yet, 2 weeks later, the WHO was saying that they didn't think human transmission was possible. And then, even a month after that, they still hadn't declared a global pandemic. So, can you talk us through some of the relationship with the WHO that Taiwan has, and whether or not it's a useful organization if it was to let Taiwan in?
Yeah, Taiwan was excluded in WHO by WHO for decades. So we worked many years. We worked hard many years, campaign many years to join as member or observer to WHO event or expert committees. But we really got greater and greater support from around the world. But still, we have a lot of work to do. As you mentioned, WHO failed in the handling of the COVID-19. I think it's no doubt about it, but it's our right for Taiwan to join as a member. It's our right because I think it's nothing to do with politics. It's not international politics issue. It's the human health issue. If the mission of the WHO is as said in the Constitution. So he tried to attain the highest possible standard of health for every human beings. So Taiwan, there's no reason to lift Taiwan out of the network. And also, Taiwan has a very good health system. We can share our experience with the rest of the world. We can contribute. So they deny Taiwan's participation. It's unfair to Taiwan. It's also unfair to the other countries. For example, in this COVID-19 cases, now we increase our production of face masks, which is needed, badly needed by other countries. So we donate our face mask to many countries. But if we can be a member, we can use the network of the WHO. We can do the help do the coordination more efficiently. We don't have to go every country by two bilateral. We can join the multilateral organizations. They'll be better for the health. It's also better for Taiwan to contribute.
Yeah. So I personally, the ACT Party agrees that Taiwan should be recognized and should be recognized by the WHO. Unfortunately, we're having enough trouble controlling the New Zealand government, let alone other governments around the world. So I don't know what will happen with the WHO, but it does seem to me that regardless of these multilateral institutions such as the UN and the WHO, there's great opportunities now for bilateral arrangements. A lot of people in the questions that have been emailed to me and also on the Facebook feed here, people are asking, well, what are the opportunities for cooperation between Taiwan and New Zealand as we come out of this virus? So, it sounds like we could learn a lot from the high-tech approach that Taiwan took to managing the virus. And B, everyone needs to get the economy going again. Taiwan has the same population as our largest trading partner, Australia. Now, there aren't any flights from Auckland to Taipei right now, but there were before the crisis. Can you tell us about what opportunities there might be, or can you tell us what sort of attitude Taiwan might have towards more cooperation with New Zealand after this crisis?
Yeah, first of all, I would just in response to your comment, I think New Zealand show their support to Taiwan's Taiwan's effort to participate indirectly. Two years ago, Dr. Ashley Broomfield was the representative of the New Zealand delegation to the World Health Assembly. He addressed the assembly by saying that there's no room for international politics when we talk about the health issue. I think he's showing his support for Taiwan's campaign. So I really hope New Zealand government and all other like-minded democracies can support Taiwan directly and openly to support Taiwan's to join as member or observer. So in any forms, we like to join because WHO claim they have the channel to discuss issues, to communicate with Taiwan. It's not true. I can give you the number. Taiwan can only participate about 30% of their meetings, the meeting of the export committees. But most of the time, 70% or more will be barred for no reason. So it's really unfair to Taiwan. Regarding your question for the future cooperation between Taiwan and New Zealand, we keep it open. I really looking forward to it. In fact, as I mentioned, China is Taiwan's biggest trading partner, but we think it's very risky to depend on one single market for any other country. So we try to diversify our market, our business to neighboring Southeastern Asian countries. We have a new southbound policy. We target the Southeastern Asian countries, Australia and New Zealand. We try to diversify our trade to other countries, the same as New Zealand. I think in the case of the COVID-19 emergency, New Zealand tourism, for example, was seriously hit. And the education sector was hit seriously because the international student, we rely on international student on China's market. But if New Zealand can diversify their market, diversify the source of international student, I think it's more sustainable and healthy for New Zealand. So I really look forward to the future cooperation in every aspect.
I completely agree about trade diversification. I think it's really important for both our countries that we have many eggs in many baskets, not all eggs in one basket.
Yes.
Because when you have many trading partners, you are not politically dependent on a particular partner. So we completely support you on that. I think we're almost getting to the stage where we've wrapped up what we needed to say. You may have more to say, but it seems to me that there's three really big lessons from Taiwan. One is that Taiwan was onto this in late December and fully operationalizing its response to COVID in mid-January, which is really quite extraordinary, 2 months before this issue really became a major thing for the rest of the world. So that's quite extraordinary how quick Taiwan was. Two is that it's almost like there's no walls between your public and private sector. You're able to use the best private sector technology for government to really efficiently track and trace the virus. And that seems to be why, even with less testing than New Zealand per capita, Taiwan has been able to have far fewer cases, far fewer deaths, and keep the economy going. That's just extraordinary by our standards. And finally, this is going to really affect how we think about Taiwan in the future. Taiwan is a friend of New Zealand, an island nation, an entrepreneurial democracy with privacy and civil liberties. And we need to think about the opportunities to strengthen our ties with Taiwan and learn from each other in the years to come as we emerge from this crisis period. So that's what I took out of it. But any final thoughts from you, Jeff?
Yeah, another thing is we have a policy initiative. Taiwan would like to join CPTPP. It's a free trade agreement. New Zealand is a member of that. Of course, Taiwan now, the CPTPP is not open for the new members yet, but we are making preparation for being ready for that. So we hope when CPTPP are open for new members in the future, we depend on your support and support from other countries, because it's a free trade agreement. If Taiwan can be a member to CPTPP, so they will increase the trade between members, between Taiwan and New Zealand. So I think it's beneficial for both. So we count on your support.
Well, thank you. And, for my part, myself and ACT and overwhelming majority of the people that I represent in the Epsom electorate and up and down New Zealand are free traders, because they recognize that a small island nation has to trade to get all the things that it wants. We've always supported the TPP. It's funny how the government started supporting it after they called it the CPTPP. Then it became okay for them even. And I understand that the policy is that more members will be coming, and that New Zealand should continue to play a leadership role in welcoming more members into the CPTPP.
Yeah, because now Taiwan and New Zealand, we have the bilateral free trade agreement. So if we can expand the bubble to a multilateral free trade agreement, that'll be great.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Jeff. We really appreciate your friendship and what we can learn from you. I hope that you have a nice afternoon. And as the Queen said, we shall see each other again at some point when this lockdown ends. And I hope that you have a really great afternoon. On behalf of everybody watching, thank you very much. And from me to everyone who's tuned in, we really appreciate you taking the time to watch this special discussion. I'll be doing more of these in the weeks to come as a replacement for the physical events that I normally host in the Epsom electorate. And I hope that people will be willing to tune in. Of course, if you've got any suggestions for guests that we could have, then please feel free to email me or message me on one of the social media platforms, and we'll bring more of this content to you. In the meantime, thank you very much, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, David, and keep in touch. Looking forward to meeting you soon.
Will do.